So as we add a vertical shift in to our graphing, I have to pay attention to a couple of things now. I'm going to start going back and forth between sine and cosine. Well, what difference does that make? Well, quite a bit. Being that those points are completely different. See, nice new sleek card here with things. We'll chat more about that in a minute. So here, okay, I look in front to find my amplitude. And we'll chat a little bit about that with this whole positive negative thing that goes as we get into a couple of the negative ones. My period. Okay, before we do period, I want to do something else with this. We're going to chat b value first. If I don't see a number in front of x or out here, okay, we assume that b value is 1. When I go to find a period is 2 pi over b. Well, if my b is 1, 2 pi divided by 1 would just be 2 pi, which again tells me what my last line on the x-axis would be. And in this case, since there's no plus or minus at the end, we're not going to have a vertical shift. So this is strictly going to be a review of what we just got done with. Okay? And there won't be any transformations because we haven't moved around at all. So here's how this is going to work. Kind of in review. We'll pull this back into play here. Okay. First thing we're always doing is getting our angle measures set. Now this is one of the spots where we had issues on the quiz. When we're multiplying these by something, we're multiplying by 1 over b. Some of you were doing 1 over the period after you'd seen what b was and did the calculating. You actually did too much stuff. Okay? My b value here is 1. So what happens if I multiply something by 1 over 1? Not much. I get the same things back. So here, my 0, my pi over 2, there's my pi, here's my 3 pi over 2, and there's my 2 pi, okay? I've got my 5 points. Right off of here, just like they have been. So then I look, okay, step 2. It's a cosine graph. Here's the values I'm using. But again, we're going to multiply them by our a value. Okay? My a value here was 2.5. So I'm just going to work my way down. My cosines, 1 times 2.5 is 2.5. 0 times 2.5 is 0. Negative 1 times 2.5 is negative 2.5. 0 times 2.5 is back to 0. And 1 times 2.5 gets me back to the top. And I remember a cosine graph looks like a U shape. Okay? Unless there's a negative, then it may look more like a hump or a hill. And that's all I'm looking for. Okay? Again, that's more of what we have been doing. Now we're going to add one piece in. So as I move to number 2, y equals sine of x minus 2. I don't see a number in front of sine, so we assume that's 1. So that would be my amplitude in this case. I don't see a number in front of my x or theta or whatever it happens to be. So my b value will be 1, meaning my period is just 2 pi. But this time I have a c value. When it's negative, it means we're going down. So my vertical shift is minus 2 or down 2. And I don't care which way you write it, as long as you understand what that means. Now here's where I would make a suggestion. Again, just me. Because some of you, if you start to do too many things at once, can get yourself into trouble. So here's what I would do. I would actually do this where I would graph points without the shift and then complete any shift. And so here's what I actually mean by that. I'm going to go through this first time as though that minus 2 is not here, that it's just sine of x. And for me in this case, that's actually going to be pretty easy. Because without my period or amplitude changing, I go, okay, well, since my period's just 2 pi, it's just these again. So 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Okay, nothing changed because I'm multiplying by 1 over 1. When I get to here, okay, no amplitude even to deal with in my sine graph. So those are the points I'm going to plot. So, and I'm just going to make them kind of small. So 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. But don't connect them. You're like, why wouldn't I connect them? Because that's not the actual graph. That would be, again, if I didn't have the minus 2 part. So here's our last part. We're going to shift the points, these 5, up or down by my c value, what's going to be down 2. So I'm going to go to each one of these points. I'm going to go down 2. And so if you have one color that you're working with, that's okay. Maybe just make your points a little bigger. And those are the ones that I'm going to connect to make my graph. That's the only difference between what we've been doing and what we're going to be doing here with our vertical shifts. So really not going to be anything that's too terribly awful. Okay? And so as we start to see more of these, there's going to be some little adjustments that we're going to make as we do this. So now here, and this is another part where we had a quiz issue, so let's take care of it. I see there's a negative in front when I get to number 3. So my a value is negative 1. My amplitude, though, we've talked about is a distance. My amplitude is still going to be positive 1. And we'll discuss the difference when we go to graph, what that actually is going to mean to us. Still no number in front of my x or my theta. So my b is still 1. We'll get to making a change with that here shortly. And again, I've got a c value. My vertical shift is going to be up 3 because of the plus 3. So again, if I need some help in figuring out how I want to get this done, breaking out the card, not a bad idea. Okay, you've still got these 2 parts. I just added this one in here today. So now when I go to do my period, okay, that's still the same. So it's still just going to be these original values. So I get those in. However, when I get to the next part, this is where I've got to be careful. Yes, my amplitude is 1. But that's not what I'm multiplying my sine or cosine values by to get my new points. It's the a value. The a value is negative 1. So when I go to get my points, it's a sine graph, so I'm using these, times the a value. So 0 times negative 1 would be 0. 1 times negative 1 would be negative 1, so it's going to open down. 0 times negative 1 is 0. Negative times negative is positive 1. And 0 times negative 1 is 0. But again, that's not taking into consideration my vertical shift yet, so don't connect the dots. Now that I've got those, now I'm going to do my shift. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. And I move those. So again, nothing too terribly awful here that I'm playing with to make this too bad. And I'm just trying to see. Yeah, we'll do that. We're actually going to go past number 4 because I see something where we can kind of get the best of all worlds here. So let's go We're going to go to 6 and 7 on the other side, and then I'm going to start helping with some worksheet ones. So, all right, if we go to number 6. I look in front, I see my A value is -3, but I remember that doesn't mean my amplitude is -3 because amplitude is always positive. It's the distance from the middle of my graph to my max or my min. My period has still not changed, and it won't change until we get to the worksheet, so we will be there in a minute. And my vertical shift is down 1. So, once I have this set, get this back where we can see it. Take a peek and I go, okay, period still hasn't changed. That's been one nice thing. We're having some other stuff change, but the period hasn't yet. Then again, remember, it's the A value that I'm multiplying my sign by. So 0 times -3 is 0. 1 times -3 is -3. 0 times -3 is 0. -1 times -3 is 3. 0 times -3 is 0. But again, no connecting yet because I still have my last shift here of down 1. So I take each of those points, I move them down 1. That is where we connect the dots and get that to work. So it kind of starts giving me an idea too on what the graph is going to look like. Okay, sine graphs normally go up and then down, but if the A value is negative, it flips. Okay, as we get to the end here with cosine, as we flip back one more time, I look and I go, okay, my value here, my amplitude is 2. Okay, and my A value is +2. So this time they happen up being the same. My period has not changed. And we're going to go down 2 with our shift. So once again, I keep myself organized. And I go, okay, period stayed the same. As I said, when we get to the worksheet, we'll find somewhere that's not the case. So we got some examples. I'm doing cosine this time. My A value is 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 0 times 2 is 0. -1 times 2 is -2. 2 times 0 is 0. And 1 times 2 is 2. So that's more of a classic cosine that looks more like a U. But I need to move each of those points, my C value, so we're going to move them each down by 2. And we're set. Okay, and we're just going to stick to graphing right now. So do not worry about 8 through 11 here. We're just going to sort of see how this is working. So, when we get to the worksheet part of this, we're going to do some of those same things, but I'm going to find somewhere we got to do a little more thinking. So let me pull this. Now some of these, and I'll admit it, some of them are just going to be review of what we just got done with, which is good for some of you if you're looking at doing a retake, that you can kind of play with these a bit. So on the front, totally review. Okay, nothing fancy going on. Actually, for like the first 2 pages, it's nothing fancy going on. Dang, I'm nice. Okay, we're going to go all the way to the back. This is where some of the funkiness is going to start. We are going to take a peek at number 12 and number 15. Because I want you to get some practice here in dealing with period changes. So this time I look and I go, okay, first thing, I have a B value this time. My B value is 2. Which means my period is 2 pi over b, or pi. Okay? What does that tell me? That is the last point that I'm going to be plotting. It's going to be pi on the end here. And if some of you are more comfortable drawing your own graph than dealing with this, that's fine. Okay? Actually, I think I'm just going to do that here. So let me do a sketch of my own, because we're kind of more used to doing it that way. Okay, I know pi is going to be the end. How do I get the rest? Okay. So let me fold this over. To get the rest, I'm going to use these values. Now remember, and I spoke about this before this video started, when I'm going to make my values, it's 1 over b. 1 over b. Okay? So we're multiplying by 1/2. We're not multiplying by 1 over pi. Okay, it's not the period. It's just taking that b value and flipping it over, multiplying by its inverse. So then I just start multiplying. 0 times 1/2 is 0. Okay? Pi times 1 is pi. 2 times 2 is 4. Pi times 1 is pi, and since I don't see a denominator, that just stays as 2. 3 pi times 1 is 3 pi. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 pi times 1 is 2 pi over 2, but 2 over 2 reduces to pi. And as long as this last value I get matches my period, that's what I'm looking for. So I'd put those in here. Now, as far as the rest of my graph goes, what do I notice next? Well, number 2 is dealing with a. Well, I don't see a number in front here. So my a value is 1. So what does that mean? It means my cosine values aren't going to change at all. So I'm like, okay. So I go here and I'm like, okay, so cosine. So 1, 0, -1, 0, and 1. But those aren't my final points. Why? Because there's one last piece to this. And my last piece is a shift of up 1 because it's positive. So I'm going to take those other points and I'm going to shift them each up 1 from where they are and make my graph. So it's going to be critical as we go through these that we keep the order intact. And that's why I've got it up on the board as well. So even if you had your card from before, okay, if you have your old card, you still have room here to do this last part, number 3, if you want to. Or if you have the pink sheet, you could do it on the back of that too. But as we're doing these, okay, and I'm going to do one more, then I'm going to get out of the way. We'll see more of this tomorrow, okay, before we start doing some review for the post. Now, reminder before I get here, we're going to rewrite this one. Because remember, when you see your angle measure over something, it doesn't mean my a value is 2. It means it's 1/2. So as I start to do this one, same thing again. Take things in the same order. First job, what's my b? My b is 1/2. Be careful. My period is 2 pi divided by 1/2. 2 divided by 1/2 is not 1. Because remember, whatever you divide by, you multiply by its reciprocal. Dividing by a half, same as multiplying by 2. Which means my period is 4 pi. It got bigger. So that's my last value. When I go to do my calculating for what these other values are, again, halvesies would work. If you do halvesies, that'd be pretty easy on this one. But if you are a creature of habit, and I know a lot of you are, be careful again. When you go to make your chart, I'm not multiplying by 1/2 this time. I'm multiplying by the flip of b, the reciprocal of b. If I flip this around, 1/2 becomes 2, or 2/1. So I'm going to multiply by 2/1 all the way through. So pi times 2 is 2 pi. 2 times 1 is 2, but that reduces. Pi times 2 is 2 pi. 3 pi times 2 would be 6 pi. 2 times 1 is 2, but that reduces. And 2 pi times 2 is 4 pi. And again, those better match. Get those set. My A value, which we're just now getting to, my A value is 2. It's a sine graph. Here's my sine values. So 2 times 0 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. 0 times 2 is 0. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. And 0 times 2 is 0. But again, those are not my final points, because I have one last piece here to play with. And that is that we're going to be moving all of my points down 2, because that's what the C value tells me. So down 2, down 2, down 2. Ooh, here I got to go further. Down 2, down 2. I get those set. Now again, great opportunity to refresh on some things. Maybe if you didn't quite catch them the first time we were doing it with sine and cosine. On those front ones, as you get to the back, more pieces start coming in. Tomorrow we play with this some more. Before Friday, we kind of start heading towards post-test reviewing and one other little thing we've got to deal with. Okay? But you've got to keep with it at this point. No handouts, no giveaways, okay? Just some hard work here down the stretch to get us where we want to be. So try these out, check out some answers at the front. Let's find some success here.